yeah, why don't you just do everything that you did before and just do it without so much stress? I was like, oh, that is a great plan.
Welcome to Book Therapy. I'm your host, Kim Patton. There's no way to count how many books are floating around in this world. Some are decent, some are truly terrible, and some are great. Today we're going to take a deep dive into one great book. Together we will discover gems of truth and encouragement to help you face your current season of life. I'm ready, you're ready, let's get this party started. Hello, friends. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I have another special interview coming up next, but first I wanted to share some really great news. The Kickstarter we started on March 7th to collect pre-orders for my next book ended on March 28th, and it was fully funded. In the last 48 hours of the campaign, a few people stepped up and really brought me through to the finish line in a really miraculous way. I'm so thankful, and I will keep you all posted on when the book is going to be ready, but I'm shooting for November of 2023, and I have already begun editing and starting the process of getting that book to you as soon as possible. So stay tuned. Let's dive into the book. Today I'm interviewing Sandy Cooper about her book, Mom, You're Amazing and Other Things I Want to Tell You. Sandy lives with her husband, John, and they have one precious son in heaven and 3 adult-ish age children. She is a writer, speaker, and podcast host. Welcome to the show, Sandy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We are going to talk today about expectations and how to let go of expectations that might be holding us back. First of all, I loved your book, of course. That's why I invited you on, because your title alone made me so happy and encouraged me when I was going to pick up the book to read. The title told me I was amazing. And I also like your alternate title, Mom, You Don't Suck.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yes.
It was such a gift. There's so many things I want to talk to you about. I love that you have a you have a couple quizzes on your website that help people figure out if social media is holding them back and if it's time for them to take a break or a longer break. That's a good quiz. The one that I specifically loved was the superpower quiz. And when I got the results back, it told me that one of my superpowers was to create order out of chaos. And I thought that was funny because I felt that my life was chaotic. But the way you focused on how I like order and routine and structure actually made me realize that's a gift that I bring to my family.
Yes.
And I bragged about myself to my husband that night because I was like, listen, she told me that my superpower, and I said, yeah, because on Mondays I go grocery shopping. On Tuesdays I clean the house. We eat lunch every day between 12 and 12:30, and then they have their rest time between 12:30 and 3. It highlighted some things about my life that felt normal to me, but you were telling me that that actually enriches my family life, and I really needed to hear that.
That's awesome. And it also reflects a character of God that your kids will see through that superpower, which I think so many moms miss. I think that they just don't even see that as an attribute of God. But bringing order out of chaos is 100% an attribute of God. And so, yeah, you're shining the light of God to your kids too, which is awesome.
All right. So the first expectation we're going to talk about is embracing your current ministry.
Yeah.
I was very impressed by the way you vulnerably shared your story in the first pages of your book about struggling with God's calling on your life, because you felt that you were called to speak, to write, to share with women, to lead Bible studies. And as you became a mother and you were adulting, you realized that your ministry was actually exactly what was right in front of you. One thing your husband mentioned to you was the interruptions at his job. He says on page 47, the interruptions are my job. That's what they pay me to do. It doesn't deter from my work. It is my work. And later on, you go to say, this is ministry. This is my calling. This is the fulfillment of my purpose, at least for now. Tell me about that shift in your mind to your expectation of thinking what God had called you to do as an adult Christian woman, and then what he actually was calling you to do, and how your days looked in reality.
Yeah, so that essay that you are referring to was written when I was just in the thick of parenting. And so yeah, I felt like I had this call on my life to be a writer and a speaker and a Bible study teacher. And, I just felt like I was supposed to change the world and, just do these quote big things for God. And it didn't help that other people saw those gifts in me too. And they would say things to me like, God's preparing you for a big ministry someday. Well, meanwhile, I've got these three little kids at home. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, yes, someday I'm going to go do big things for God. Like someday my real ministry will happen. And this is just preparation for that real thing, like where God puts me in a stadium and I speak to people like, in like arenas or, I don't know what I was thinking. And whenever I would sit down to try to work on my quote real ministry, like to write or to prepare something to teach at church or in my home, and my kids would need me, I viewed those as interruptions. I'd be like, hold on, because mom's working on her real ministry. I mean, I wouldn't actually say that, but in my mind, I would be like, what is going on? Because God has given me these gifts, not meaning the kids, meaning like my ability to write. And I say that in quotation marks. I'm using so many quotation marks right now with my one hand. Um, and I would see that I'm trying to steward my gifts and my kids are interrupting this. And that conversation I had with my husband was like a complete game changer for me because he is a hospital executive and he has a really busy job. And he came home and he is, telling me all about how this person, came in and had this complaint and how he had to talk this other person through this issue. And he had, these issues on this in this department and that department. And my heart is just aching for him because I'm thinking, how does he ever get his work done? He's like interrupted all day long. And so I said to him, like, wow, it must be really hard to get through and do your real job. And that's when he said to me, the interruptions are my job. And I was like, whoa. And all of a sudden, I thought, wait a minute, these kids are not preparation for my real ministry. This is my ministry. This isn't like my fake life in preparation for the real thing, or this isn't like pre ministry and then I'm going to have the real thing. Like the kids are what I'm supposed to be doing. What bigger world changing thing can I possibly do than to teach my children how to love God and how to function in the world and how to steward the gifts that they have? And it was such a mindset shift for me. It made me approach my days and my children from that point on completely different. And if God ever chooses to let me do the other thing, great. But until then, these kids are my job.
It's easy to think that we're putting our lives on the shelf because for some reason in a certain seasons it doesn't feel like real life.
Yeah.
But when we can take it down from the shelf and say, no, this is real life. This is what God has given me right now. I know a lot of people or have heard people talk about whenever they're caretaking, they can feel like their life is on hold because
Right.
they are 100% devoted to taking care of someone else and not free to live their own life as they
Mhm.
once might have done. But God gives us these opportunities to take care of each other in serving someone and sacrificing for someone. There is rich blessings in there, but it can feel very lonely and it can feel like you're not accomplishing big things. But what is big things to God? Big things to God are small things.
That's right.
On page 55, you talk about running your race at the pace that God has given you. And I think specifically you're talking about friendships and how in
Mhm.
certain seasons of life people come in and out. And sometimes it's hard to hold on to friendships when people move away. I recently just moved from Florida to Georgia and I left a whole bunch of people I loved so much. And that was a
Mhm.
hard thing. And I'm in a different season now where I'm meeting new people and finding new friends. You say My job is to run my race at the pace God directs me to run. As I run, I can look alongside me and see who is running at my pace.
Mhm.
Those seasons don't last forever either, because you're, like you said, your priority is your family. If that's what God has called you to do, that's what your priority is. So whoever else kind of flies across your path during that time, you are free to love in the capacity that you can love. So how did that change the way you looked at friendships and the way you looked at whatever season you were in?
Yeah, well, again, this was a story thankful for my husband and his wisdom. Something that he just said in passing that completely changed how I viewed things. Because as a mom, I found it very difficult, and I still do at times, but especially when my kids were small, I found it really difficult to prioritize female friendships. Parenting little kids can be really isolating. It was for me. Plus, I'm kind of naturally an introvert and I like home. And so, then when you're just in the thick of parenting, it's just hard to connect schedules because it's not just my schedule and, my kids' naps that I'm working around and my kids, after school activities that I'm carting them to, but it's my friends, like they have their thing going on too. And so I was just really struggling with that. And so my husband is, in addition to being a hospital executive, is also a triathlete. And he does these really long races. At the time that I wrote that essay, he had only been doing half Ironman, which I say only half, which is ridiculous because I hate
Was that like
running.
100 miles?
It's like I don't even know. It's short. It's like a 5-hour race total. But his now he is a 2-time Ironman finisher, and yeah, he's amazing. Anyways, so I was asking him one time because he's running these long races, and I was curious, like, did he run with people? Did he run alone? Like that's a long time to race. Like the Ironman, it can be 10, 11 hours, 12 hours. And I'm like, what are you doing the whole time? Are you talking to people? Like, how does that go? And so he just explained to me that he'll be riding or cycling and he will notice that someone like comes up alongside of him and they're going the same pace. And so for a period of time, he will turn and talk and they'll, as much as they can, communicate and cheer each other on. And then eventually one of them needs to speed up and one of them drops back. And that I thought was such an amazing metaphor for how I needed to approach friendships and that I needed to quit trying to keep up with the women who were running faster than me or were just in a different season than me or the ones who were trailing behind, like feeling like I kept needing to drag them to come with me. And instead, if I just looked on either side to like wherever I was in life, whether, and I thought all the way back to being like a single woman or a college student or married without kids, like all the different seasons, I recognize like, oh wow, every single season of life brought with it people who were right there. And lifelong friendships are awesome. And I'm a big fan of, those lifelong friends that you pick up the phone and as if no time has passed.
Mm-hmm.
But those are really hard to maintain.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you just look to wherever you are, who's sitting in the stands with you while you're watching your kid at practice, who's walking in the neighborhood while you're pushing the stroller to the park, who's at the library when you go and check out your books, like those can be your very best friends. So that was where that essay came from.
Yeah, it's really important. Okay, moving on to expectation number 2. I cannot do it all. Man, what a bummer.
I know I want to do it all, but I can't.
You have this massive list on pages 91 to 92 or 91 to 95. I don't even know. It's a massive list where
Yeah.
you list all of the things that moms expect of themselves
Yeah.
or expect to make them a good mom. And at the end, you say, Mom, this is ridiculous. I cried, I think, at the end of this chapter because, yes, because you whipped out the all caps and you said, You are a good mom.
Yes.
It's okay to believe it, to say it, to embrace that identity. Rest in God's grace for you today. Silence the voice of the accuser. Expel the lie. You are doing a great job. You are a good mom. I
Yeah.
know I cried because I was like, oh, okay, I believe you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, you are talking about just casual conversations with people, and people ask how your kids are doing. And
Yeah.
you had reached that point in your life where your teenagers were maybe making decisions that you didn't agree with and that weren't easy to talk about. And you also wanted to respect the privacy of the people you love. So tell me about the transition, or talk to me about the difference between raising little kids and moving on to older kids who you have to let them be their own people, maybe for the first time, and how vulnerable you feel as a parent when your kids make bad decisions, and how we can still believe that we are serving God and loving God to the best of our ability when other people kind of make us look bad.
Yeah. Wow, that's a loaded question. Well, I want to go back quickly to that list of 5 pages of things that, because it kind of will segue into your question. That was a list of things that other moms said that they think a good mom should be. I asked them to fill in the blank, and it was something like, good moms do blank. I don't do that, therefore I'm a bad mom. Because I thought there's something in every mom's head that tells them that they're like falling short
Mhm.
somehow. There's just this lie that moms believe that, like, I'm not a bad mom because I don't do X. And that list was so ridiculous. Each thing individually is not ridiculous. You know, it'd be things like, good moms cook home cooked meals. I don't do that. I'm a bad mom. Or good moms stay home with their kids. Or good moms don't mind a messy house, you know, or whatever. But when I listed them in succession, and there were like 100 things, they not only were ridiculous, but they contradicted each other.
Mhm.
And so, I just wanted to put context to what that was about, because how we define what is a good mom is everything. We have to have some truth about really what does make a good mom. Like, a good mom loves her kids. She shows up. She keeps at it. She pays attention. It's those kinds of things. It's not whether or not she keeps a clean home or a messy home, or whether or not she cooks or, orders McDonald's or whatever. Like, those things are not the good mom, bad mom. That's not the standard. So then, as we approach parenting, so my kids right now, I have an almost 24-year-old, a 21-year-old, and a 16-year-old. And then my oldest son died, as you mentioned. And how we approach parenting and our kids at the different stages is, especially your first time through parenting, it just throws, I mean, it threw me. Like, I was not prepared, because I thought I was a good mom. Like, I've never thought that I was really a bad mom. There was this time where, my kids were very responsive to my parenting style. um 4 to 6 is like the most delightful age, but yes, and
Aw.
up until about 11, they still think you're cool, and they want to help you around the house, and there's not a lot of attitude. And you might have those angel kids who will always be awesome, and yay. I'm so happy for you. I did not have those kids, and I think most of us don't have those kids.
Right.
But there was a transition for sure where, one of my kids, well, two of my kids, for very different reasons, just had really, really tumultuous middle school and high school experiences for completely different reasons and completely different set of circumstances. But it was, both of them were really hard, on my family and on them, of course, and on my marriage. And I didn't know how to navigate it. Kids, when they're hurting, they only they only know to act out and hurt and lash out at the people who are closest to them. And so a lot of it was directed, like, a lot of their pain was directed at me. And because I was always there. When you're told by your kid that you suck, it's really hard to override that with truth and be like, no, I don't. I don't. And so the Mom You're Amazing title of this book is not trite. Like that isn't me just going, yeah, mom, you're doing great. That's me like digging deep past the lies that my kids' choices are a direct reflection of my ability to parent them, or my worth as a mom, or mistakes that I've made, or really anything. Like it was so little a reflection of how I parented them, and just a reflection of them just growing up and being themselves. And so, yeah, it's just this dance between trying to honor who they are, their privacy, honor them as emerging adolescents and young adults, and then also demanding respect and coaching and navigating and correcting, and then also trying to like keep your identity intact. Like that just feels like a whole separate conversation, like a whole conversation we could just have. It's such a deep question. I don't even know if I answered it. I more just addressed it, but
Well, your first kid, I mean, your daughter who grew up to be a teenager, she was your first launching point into something you've never done before. And then your
right,
second kid faced those years in a completely different way. And then your third kid,
right.
another different way. And so it's almost like even though you did it before, you were still navigating new territory every time.
Yes, because you have your experience, of course, but you're dealing with individuals, and you're not the same parent every time because you have grown. And so now you're dealing with a different child in a different set of circumstances, and you are a different parent. This is why I don't know how people do it without Jesus, because if I did not have the wisdom of the Holy Spirit to draw on, and the wisdom of the Word of God to anchor to, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't even know
Yeah,
what I was doing.
we'd all be spinning out of control.
Absolutely.
Our third expectation is it's God's job to hold us together. You say on page 225, it is not your job to hold you together. This is God's job, and He is good at it. He does His best work in those of us who hold our frail, fragile, shell like hearts to Him and say, help me, please. I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I relate to this a lot. And this whole chapter kind of talks about you getting extra minutes in your day or extra hours in your day and having to decide what to do with that extra time. And
Yeah.
again, your husband seems to be coming up a lot, Sandy.
I know. Gosh, he's really great, isn't he? I feel like I need to give him a hug at the end of this.
Yeah, kudos to John,
Yeah.
because he said maybe you could just do what you were planning to do a little less frantically. And I can picture my husband doing that too. Like,
Yes.
hey, why don't you go ahead and just like take a nap today? And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? A nap? No,
What?
I
A
have way
nap.
too much to get done. And he's
That's
like,
right.
well, you sound like you need a nap.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. So yeah, that essay was born out of my daughter had just gotten her license and bought a car. And so she was going to be driving to school and taking the two younger kids to school with her because they all went to the same school. And I had an extra 2 hours a day. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, what should I do? And I just all of a sudden the bar raised for me. Like I just thought I have to do everything that I feel like I can't ever get done. And I was trying to like think through, what am I going to do with those 2 hours a day? And yeah. And John, again, in his wisdom, was like, yeah, why don't you just do everything that you did before and just do it without so much stress? I was like, oh, that is a great plan. Because yeah, I mean, I raised the bar on myself so much. And, I use the analogy of my fitness tracker, how I had this thing tracking my steps. And 2 weeks ago, I was reaching my goal at 8,000 steps. And then all of a sudden, if I reached my 8,000 steps, it would raise it to, 8,700 and then 9,000. And so 2 weeks later, I'm at 10,000 and I'm still not like reaching my goal. And I do that to myself. I feel like as humans, we do that to ourselves. Like as soon as we reach a goal, we just like raise the bar and raise the bar and raise the bar. And so, yeah, that's really where that essay was born from. And that is still a constant struggle for me. That as soon as, especially with time, as soon as I free up some hours in my day, I just feel like I can do all the things that I never have time to do in that 45 minutes. It's dumb.
And it's hard to decide what to do. Like, let's
Yeah.
say there are 10 things you can do. And
Yeah.
I face this probably every day as well, where if I don't have something pressing, I have 10 things that are pressing. And so I have to choose which one.
Yep.
And often what gets bumped to the bottom is rest.
Yeah.
And so there's things I could be doing like a puzzle or,
Right.
taking a nap, which I honestly, people, please don't hate me, but I don't love naps. Like they're not my favorite. It's
Yeah.
not
A lot
like
of
my
people don't do
go-to.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just I would rather be productive. I don't love sleep. My husband loves sleep so much. He's like a newborn baby, his little eyes shut and he's just like gone and it's like 8:30 and I'm thinking
Yeah.
why are we watching TV if you are not watching TV? And
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a funny thing. Like quality time together is him sleeping
Right.
and me
That's
sitting there
hilarious. I love
watching
it.
watching this intense like murder show. And I'm like, wait a minute.
During an intense murder show. I like the qualification there. I'm
Yeah,
the
and I'm
only
like freaked
one.
out in my mind. And then I look over and my companion who's supposed to be my safe zone is like
Yeah, so not cool. Yeah.
I have to say that there's so many other things I want to talk about. This book was filled with so many little tiny scenes
Mhm.
that spoke to my heart like an arrow because it's
Mm.
exactly what I'm going through. So I'm thankful that you were able to address things and kind of point me back to the truth and
Yeah.
also just practicality. Is this mindset going to get you anywhere thinking that you're a terrible person?
Right.
I'm actually reading a book right now that's basically called You Are Not a Terrible Person.
Mm.
And that's not the title. And I can't really share the title on this podcast. It has helped me so much. It has taught
Yeah.
me about self compassion. And while it's not a Christian book, it has allowed me to take the love of God and let that fuel the self compassion. So it's not coming from me, it's coming from
Mhm.
the love of God. And I want to live a life that embraces the love of God, the forgiveness of God, his presence, his compassion in my moments of weakness. So that's what I'm kind of leaning into.
I love that.
So we talked about letting go of expectations, embracing your current ministry, realizing that you cannot do it all, and that it's God's job to hold us together. Tell us about your other books, your
Mhm.
website, and your brand new podcast that just launched today.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So my first book is called Finding Your Balance, and that is an 11 lesson Bible study. My second book is The Voice in My Head God or Just Me? And that is a Bible study on hearing the voice of God. And then Mom, You're Amazing is my third book. My website is The Scoop on Balance, and there I help overwhelmed Christian moms. I have also a podcast called The Balanced Momcast. I've been doing that for 4 years, which is crazy to me. And then my newest venture is that I started a podcast with my friend Mary Kay Tiller, and it is called Writing Off Social. In Mom, You're Amazing, I talk a little bit about my frustration with social media. When I went back and reread that essay that I wrote, it was from 10 years ago. I could not, well, 9 years ago, I guess, because it was 2014 that I was struggling so much with social media even back then. And so since then, in March of 2021, I completely left social media. And as a writer, that is almost unheard of. And so I started this podcast with my friend and also a website. We'll have courses and coaching for writers, but it's called Writing Off Social, and it's for female Christian writers who want to learn to grow and nurture their audience without social media. So yeah, kind of taking a little turn, a little pivot, but still working on all of my other stuff too.
Well, I honestly will be praying for you because you are kind of carving out a new lane in the
Mhm.
publishing industry for Christian writers. And you might be one of only a handful of people who are even doing this or even thinking about doing this. So
Yes.
thank you so much for
Mm.
joining me. Thank you for your books. Thank you for your ministry. Thank you for allowing us to read your nitty gritty story so that we can learn and be encouraged.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Book Therapy. Today's guest was Sandy Cooper, and we talked about her book, Mom, You're Amazing, and Other Things I Want to Tell You. Check out Sandy Cooper on her website, The Scoop on Balance. And if you are a female Christian writer, check out her new podcast, Writing Off Social. I have been listening to it and it is incredible. She truly is doing something that nobody else is doing. And if you're interested at all in that, check her out because she's going to help guide you as she guides me through this world of trying to figure out if we can live without social media. See you next time.